Good evening, everyone. Nope, that totally didn't work. I feel like I should shout. What are you talking about? I do need a bell. So I don't want to shout, but I am going to try to start because we have a bunch of people joining us on live stream who are waiting for us to get going. Hey, there we went. Okay. I feel like if Deborah had been up front, she would have gotten everybody quieter more quickly. Okay. All right. Okay. Hello, everybody, and good evening. I'm Kathryn Zecca, and I'm the president of the Many Hands Board. I'd like to start by extending a very warm welcome to everybody who's new to Many Hands, to our returning members, to everybody participating by live stream. We started a little late, which if you've done live stream before, happen, but I apologize for starting a little late, and a special welcome to our special guest tonight, Mercedes Lemp. I know that many of us right now are very focused on, and some of us are personally impacted by the events in Israel, and we are very grateful that you took some time this evening to come hear about Many Hands and our organization, so thank you. Tonight, I want to give you a brief overview of what we do at Many Hands and how you can be involved. And after answering any questions you may have about Many Hands, I'll be turning over the microphone to our guest from our 2022 Impact Grantee, My Sister's Place. So I'm especially excited to welcome everybody to this kickoff of our 2024 grant cycle, because 2024 will mark the 20th anniversary of Many Hands' first grant. So more than 20 years ago, 7 DC area women joined together with a goal of collectively raising $1,000 each from 100 women and pooling those donations to a single $100,000 grant to a local nonprofit. And in 2004, Many Hands made its first grants. Members had achieved that goal, and those grants totaled just over $100,000. So we're coming up on 20 years later, and Many Hands receives contributions from more than 250 donors each year. We have made more than 50 grants to local organizations. These grants have totaled $2.8 million. And if we have successful fundraising this grant cycle, when we mark our 20th anniversary in 2024, we will have granted more than $3 million. So I think I can speak for the entire Many Hands Board and our many returning members here tonight when I say that we're proud to be part of the work that was started 20 years ago. So for those of you who are just learning about Many Hands, let me tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do. As you have probably already gathered, we are a collective giving organization. We make grants to local nonprofits serving and empowering women, children, and families in socioeconomic need. Our grants help provide access to education, employment, health, and housing for thousands of families and individuals across our region. Every year, we make 4 grants. One impact grant totaling $100,000 and 3 partner grants that are determined by each year's fundraising. Last year, our partner grants were $70,000 each. Our grants are unrestricted, which means our nonprofit grantees are allowed to use those dollars as they best see fit to serve their mission and, in turn, our mission of helping women, children, and families in need. Last year, we granted a total of $310,000 to 4 organizations. Our $100,000 impact grant went to communities and schools of the nation's capital, a DC organization which works in DC public schools to provide students a community of support, empowering them to stay in school and achieve in life. And 3 other organizations received our partner grant. Those were Child Resource Center, formerly Prince George's Child Resource Center, but they've changed their name, which creates healthy and nurturing environment for children using a multi-generational approach. Edufuturo, which breaks the cycle of poverty by empowering underserved Latino and immigrant youth and families through education and leadership development. And the Wanda Alston Foundation, which works to eradicate homelessness for LGBTQ youth ages 18 to 24 and ensure that they have access to services that improve their quality of life. As a collective giving organization, we combine the energy, the talents, and of course the resources of our members to magnify each member's impact as a donor and a philanthropist. We combine our individual grant gifts to fund our grants. And we combine our beliefs, our values, and our experience to select each year's grantees. Every member who joins by December 31st is eligible to serve on one of our 4 focus area committees. And our 4 focus areas are economic empowerment, education, health, and housing. Members of the focus area committee vet grant applications and select that committee's grantee. And then, at the end of the focus area committee process in May, each of the 4 grantees will present, and every Many Hands member is eligible to vote and decide which organization will receive that year's impact grant. Becoming a member is simple. There's no volunteer requirement. There's no application. There's simply every member who makes a gift of $1,000 or more becomes a member, or if you are under 35, the required member donation is $300. Once you become a member, you decide how and how much you want to be involved. You can serve on a focus area committee and review grant applications. You can come to the meeting in May and vote for the impact grantee. You can attend our education events. You can help plan events and become involved in financial review or in operations or governance. You can do all of the above, or you can simply make your gift, knowing that your investment in Many Hands will support high-impact local nonprofits. Many Hands' work is as important today as it was 20 years ago when we made our first grant. Yesterday was National Give to Women and Girls Day, and in doing some reading on the significance of the event, I was reminded that only 2% of philanthropic dollars are dedicated to organizations serving women and children. Yes, yes to the boo back there. So our grants, they serve not only an important community, but also one that is underserved by and often unnoticed by major philanthropic efforts. At the end of our programming this evening, after Mercedes speaks, I'm going to offer some brief closing remarks. But before I introduce Mercedes, does anybody have any questions about Many Hands that I can answer? There.
The 7 women who founded Many Hands, are any of them here tonight?
I do not see any of them here tonight. I know some of them who are still local were traveling this evening and couldn't join us, but many of them are still members and still involved. So tonight we are thrilled to welcome the executive director of our 2022 impactee, impact grantee. Wow, our 2022 impact grantee, My Sister's Place. Mercedes Lemp has served as executive director of My Sister's Place since April of 2018. Prior to joining My Sister's Place, she worked at Montgomery Hospice and twice served as the executive director of Washington English Center from 2011 to 2015, and before that, from 2002 to 2005. In between her services at Washington English Center, she was appointed as the director of the Washington, D.C. Mayor's Office of on Latino Affairs by Mayor Adrian Fenty, and served as a cabinet member from 2007 through 2010. In addition to her government and nonprofit experience, Mercedes was the marketing director at the Council of Better Business Bureau's BBB online website program, and also worked as Channels program manager for Latin American sales at Netscape Communications Corporation. She held an MBA in international marketing from George Washington University and a BA in business management and administration from the University of Maryland, College Park. She is a member of the 2014 class of Leadership Greater Washington, the National Association of Hispanic MBAs, and has served on the DC Public Schools Joint Advisory Council and on the Mayor's Adult Literacy Council. After Mercedes speaks, we will open the floor for Q&A. If any of our guests participating by live stream have a question for our speakers, please email the question to the following email address. It's legal@manyhandsdc.org. Again, that's legal@manyhandsdc.org, and I will pass the question along to Mercedes. So with that, please welcome Mercedes Lemp.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, especially on this anniversary year coming up. And it's really interesting because my sister's place is also celebrating an anniversary, which is 45 years, right? Thank you. And we were also founded by a group of women, of course. Women do all the best work. So I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you again. I can't believe it was just a year and a half ago. When I was thinking about it, I thought it was like 4 years ago. I started wondering, was it before COVID, after COVID? Anyway, so much has happened, and I'm really grateful to be able to come here to tell you about it. And so much has happened because of the grant that you gave my sister's place that has really changed in some ways, the trajectory of what we're doing, especially this year coming up. We're really focusing on economic equity and empowerment, and the funds that were granted from Many Hands went to our Fresh Start Fund, and I'll tell you more about that and how that's connected to what we're doing now. So the grant came at a pivotal time. It was during COVID, not before COVID, and in a time when domestic violence was going up, inflation was going up, and probably many of you know that financial abuse and finances is a huge barrier to survivors. Financial abuse goes hand in hand with domestic abuse, and it's the number one reason why survivors stay in an abusive relationship or go back to an abusive relationship. So it was just such a pivotal time for us, and that was part of my presentation that I gave 2 years ago. So we were just so thrilled to be able to have those funds, because those funds went to our Fresh Start Fund. And that Fresh Start Fund allows us to give funds directly to clients to support educational endeavors, but also to address any immediate needs. And during COVID and now, and really, unfortunately, probably moving forward, rents are so high, food is so expensive. So we found that in the past, maybe our Fresh Start Fund was supporting things like getting a credential or going to a workforce program or fixing a car tire or things like that. And more, the funds that you were able to provide went to food, utilities, rent, just really basic needs. So I know some of you were not here when I spoke last, so I'll tell you a little bit about my sister's place. We serve families and individuals fleeing domestic violence. We have now 2 shelters. When I was here last, we were purchasing a building. We've completed that building. We have 2 emergency shelters. And what that is when a survivor is initially fleeing, they have nowhere to go. They just need someplace to find safety and then gather themselves and be connected to resources. And clients are with us in emergency shelter anywhere from 30 days to 6 months, sometimes a year. And surprisingly, we're the only emergency shelter serving domestic violence survivors. And emergency, there is an organization called DC Safe, which we work very closely with, and they're called, it's not emergency, it's, I can't remember the terminology, but they will pick you up that night, but they can only house families for 20 days. And so then we come in and we're up to 9 months, and then after that, it's transitional housing or what might come next. In addition to the 2 emergency shelters that we have transitional housing programs. We have our RISE program, which we serve about 60 women for a year to 2 years. We provide rent, we provide counseling, wraparound supportive services. We have a RISE Plus program through HUD, which serves another 45 families for up to 2 years, again, providing rents. Sometimes those rents are reduced month by month in the hopes that the families can gain self-sufficiency and then be able to take on their own rents. We have an FRSP program, which is Family Rehousing Stabilization, which you probably have read a lot about. In fact, I think it was just part of that awful Post article, which what Post article isn't awful these days, about families being provided housing by the city, but no case management. So what do? You're just sitting, and then a lot of times the housing is terrible. It's a very hard program, but we were the first organization who served domestic violence survivors who got into FRSP, providing that case management, which they weren't doing at all. They were just providing homeless services, and that's a different thing. There are similarities, of course, but you want to address the trauma. There are a lot of unique things about domestic violence survivors, so we've expanded that program quite a lot. And then we have our Fresh Start Fund. In our aftercare program, we tell our clients, once you're an MSP client, you're always an MSP client. Domestic violence is not a straight line. A lot of clients come and go, and they fall back, and it's not a 1-year thing, and then you're off and you're doing great. And so we always keep the door open, and we have this aftercare program where we keep in touch with clients, and we're always reaching out to see if there's things they need, including our Fresh Start Fund, which is basically a fund that any client can work with their advocate, their case manager, or come talk to us directly and tell us they have a need. There's actually no real limits and requirements to it, just you're a domestic violence survivor and you let us know, my car broke down. I want to enroll in this nursing program. I want to finish my education. So the invoicing can be anywhere from a couple $100s to a couple $1,000s. We actually paid for a client who was here whose mother was dying, I think in Vietnam. We paid for her airfare for her and her son to go back to Vietnam. So many things, some very pivotal, transformative things. And as I can tell you, last year, we filled over 700 requests and gave out almost $400,000. And that's, it can be an airplane ticket, but it can be finishing your education, starting a business, things that are not just one-time impact, but impact, that affects families forever. And so when I was here a year and a half ago, or a bit more, one of the other grantees was CAB, Capital Area Asset Builders. And we had worked with CAB a bit before, but seeing them in the room and talking to them just inspired us to get connected again. And so when they heard about the Fresh Start Fund, they have matching programs. And so Joseph was very excited about, if you have your clients save, I think it's $1,500, they can match it with $7,000. And so we started working together. But then why I say this was a catalyst for economic equity and economic security is because it really started me thinking about the impact of just giving money to people. And domestic violence, and hearing a lot about guaranteed income programs. And if finances is the number one reason people stay or leave or can't leave or go back, why not deal with the finances? Like, it's so obvious. And there was no guaranteed income program specifically targeting domestic violence survivors that I could see anywhere in the country. I spoke to our government funders about it. They were excited about it, but couldn't fund it because of regs or restrictions in their funding. I just spoke to Councilmember McDuffie this morning, literally, about trying to change the regs. But the Fresh Start Fund and the need for cash, really got me pushing this idea of, like, I want to do this for domestic violence survivors. I want to do it not as a pilot for guaranteed income, because we all know that already works. We were just talking about it in the lobby. No need to pilot it. We know it works. But to show the impact on domestic violence survivors, like, why aren't we doing this? And so the Greater Washington Community Foundation has a big fund, and they funded us. They funded CAB. We're working with CAB to do this guaranteed income program. And so now we have a program where we're serving 45 families, giving them $500 a month for 2 years. Wow. Yeah, thank you. And I bring this all up to point out the fact that had it not been for being in that room over there 18 months ago, 2 years ago with Joseph, and he's very into guaranteed income, and I know you guys are going to hear him, I think, in a month or two. We wouldn't have partnered. I wouldn't have thought, oh, I can do this, but I can partner with CAB. CAB is providing, the thing about our program is it's guaranteed income, the funds, but it's also economic education through CAB. It's knowing your credit score. Why do you need to know it? Why is it important? And we're actually talking about building upon it and really targeting to home ownership, because my other big thing is, if you really want to build wealth, if you want to build security, safety, it's all about home ownership, and rent is so expensive anyway. You might as well be paying a mortgage. And how can we, talk to our clients, and whether it's 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, at least start thinking about home ownership. Like you can do that. So it really shifted my mindset about this economic equality and economic barriers, and it was really as a response to seeing the impact, having that extra $100,000 in that Fresh Start Fund and being able to say yes to so many more things was really impactful. And I want to say there's also a parallel to how you have shifted to unrestricted funds, because a lot of what guaranteed income is about is trusting people and how they spend their funds. So as I was hearing about that, I thought, oh, there's so many parallels for me to come tonight. Because what we see is, people will make the right choices. And also giving them that dignity says a lot, right? We're not going to tell you what you need. We're not going to ask you. We're not going to, we trust you. And so in closing, I just want to underscore the importance of the work that you're doing, and that those small amounts of funds, whether it be in Fresh Start or whether it be individually, everybody giving $1,000, comes together to have this huge impact. And I applaud you for making it unrestricted and letting organizations decide how best to use the funds, which really goes hand in hand with this, guaranteed income. And hopefully you'll get lots of grantees proposing guaranteed income. That's my hope. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm forgetting to tell you about. We have grown the organization. We're almost 40 full-time staff right now. We're adding a director or economic equality program manager to show our priority in this area. And our budget last year was over $10 million. Yeah, so it really grew quite a lot. I'm almost embarrassed to say it. But, thank you. No matter how much more we get, there's so much of a need, and even, growing to being a bigger organization makes my hopes bigger, right? So I'm thinking home ownership. I'm not thinking renting, no, let's, so I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I know it is a hard job. When I was at the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs, we did have grants, and I saw so many amazing, wonderful nonprofits doing amazing work. So I know it's a hard choice to make, where you give your funds, but you can't go wrong. Any little bit helps, and just know that you're making a huge difference. So, should I take questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
With your two shelters, how many women or families can you
Yeah.
house at any one time?
So our original shelter housed 15 families, and It's a family would all live in one room and share a bathroom, maybe with two other families, and the families were all in one room. They still are, in bunk beds sometimes. You know, it's not the greatest, but we try to make it as nice as possible. In our new shelter, it's apartments. So it's amazing. They're beautiful apartments. When I've shown people through there, they're like, I would live here. But they have exposed brick, they have stainless steel, and it really, what was important for me about this shelter is to be able to serve families with older boys, because oftentimes we would have, even when I first started at my sister's place, we weren't accepting, we wouldn't let boys over, I think it was like 14 or 16, and I was like, my 18-year-old son is still my kid. You know, like, if you're fleeing domestic violence, what are you going to do with your but I cannot, you know, like, it's a man in the same space sharing a bathroom. You know, how do you know, we would make it work, and there's a upstairs suite. But this allows us to much better serve families that have older boys, bigger families where we've had families with 5 kids, or LGBTQ families who may not feel comfortable sharing a bathroom. So it just gives us a lot of flexibility. And then also what I really love about the fact that it's apartments, and it's 6 apartments, that we could transition that to transitional shelter or transitional housing if that becomes a need. If we see, you know, there's not as much people looking for shelter, and sometimes people don't want to go to shelter, it has a bad connotation, and they just want to go straight into transitional housing. And if we find, you know, it allows for that flexibility. But so that, it's 6 different apartments, and it just depends on how quickly people turn over. Generally, it's 3 months, so every 3 months. So every 3 months times 21 families, but some families stay longer, and we don't, you know, we move people on when they're ready to move on. Yes.
Can you comment on the process of being an applicant to Many Hands? What you have to do?
Oh, yeah. I've done it a lot of times, so. I should remember. I think I was just speaking to somebody about how I really appreciate the thoroughness, because I know that there are a lot of organizations, and I really love that you do the site visits. Like, sometimes, you know, I felt like going through the application process that you guys knew what we were all about. Like, you had turned every stone. And so from what I remember, it's definitely lengthy, but it wasn't so, you know, I think we did it 3 times. So it was not, we just kept on trying. And also there is a rumor out there that keep on trying. And we got a lot of encouragement to keep on trying. So we kept on doing it. And actually, even going through the process just makes you better, makes you be better able to tell your story. And for me, and I think I said this when I was here last time, it's not just about this grant, it's about getting the word out. And there's so many people in the room, so it's a great opportunity. You know, like, whether we get the grant or not, so many more people heard our stories. So that's really a benefit of it as well. Yes?
I would like to hear something about mental health issues.
Yeah.
So what kind, how do you address this?
Yeah.
Do you go where?
It's so hard. That's the hardest thing. So a lot of our clients, I was also mentioning, are young women. So not only, well, they've gone through domestic violence, so that's going to give you mental health issues right there anyway. They might have addiction. They're so young. They're kids. They don't know how to be adults. They have kids themselves, so it's very hard. And mental health, I can tell you, if you support anybody coming up, mental health is definitely an area to focus on. There's just not enough. And we don't provide mental health support ourselves, because we even looked into it, but to get into that, being that type of service provider is a huge hurdle. It's a lot of, like, insurance risk. It's just a whole other stratosphere of, and we wouldn't be the best at it anyway, so we're not going to do that. We're going to go to people who are doing that as their mission. But there are not enough mental health providers. There are not enough offering it, low cost. We just had somebody present to us who just started a group providing mental health support to families for free. But I think they only had space for, 10 families or something like that. And then also what happens with free or low cost, it's usually, 3 times. It's not like a long-term thing. So then people are going from, it's a huge issue, and we don't have the solution, honestly. That's a big, I wish, I even thought about, this is another crazy idea I had, there's that mental health app or that you can call, you can do it, and I started to think maybe we should get like 100 membership app for 2 years, So I've been thinking about it, but it's a big issue for everybody. Yeah.
Aside from mental health, what are the other gaps? And in terms of our thinking in the future.
Yeah.
What are the other kinds of things?
Yeah.
Economic.
Yeah.
Or education, or other folks you'd like to partner with.
Yeah, there's so many gaps. If mental health is huge, obviously, and for me, I think housing is just so. Who can live in DC? That's another thing we're thinking. Should we go to Prince George's County? And even when we work with our clients, and I love DC. I don't live in DC anymore, but I did for many years. And our clients want to be in DC. They've grown up here. This is where their support is. And there's a catch-22 because DC provides a lot of supportive services, maybe more than Montgomery County or Prince George's County. But the cost of housing is so expensive. So maybe you can move somewhere, but then you don't have the supportive services. So they're like really reluctant to move. But affordable housing, it's just crazy that the city has so many units that are in disrepair and not used. Like, again, I was talking to somebody about, like, it's not brain surgery. Like, why? Why is that happening? Or, so to me, housing, mental health, and economic, that, I always say, and this is sort of like preaching, putting myself out of business in a sense, all these funds that go to so many nonprofits to solve housing, well, you solve housing by providing housing. We don't need, to pay 20,000 people to put programs together to maybe get you in a place where maybe you can afford a house. Just put up a darn house already and give it to somebody, And so that's the way I feel about this guaranteed income. Is like, why give us all these funds to create these programs? I mean, people just need food. They need to be able to pay utilities. But those are the areas that I would definitely, there's so much. Yes?
Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. It was a very, very inspiring talk. So I have really 2 questions. One is, you mentioned talking to a councilman, and you mentioned housing. So say a little more about to what extent part of what you do is advocacy, and maybe where we need to focus on getting housing built that is affordable, because otherwise you're going to be saving forever and not be able to be in the district. And then the other question is, say a little about, you've grown a lot since first receiving the Many Hands grant. Where do you see this evolving in, say, 3 years, 5 years?
Good question. So in terms of housing and advocacy, we actually don't do so much advocacy ourselves. There's a DC Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And so, again, I'm very much of the thought of, we have so much to do already. Mm-hmm. The coalition is there to do advocacy. I'll tell you what our needs are. They know what the needs are. I was visiting this council member because I have a relationship with him, and it was about guaranteed income, and we're trying to push that. But it was interesting because I was presenting it to him as, he's supportive of, we already know he's supportive of guaranteed income, but of allowing, making sure that I'm not asking for more money, but the grants that you give out, let us use it for guaranteed income. And we weren't able to. So, it's not a hard thing. So that's something that he was really excited about and something he can talk to the mayor about and maybe talk to the agencies about. And then for our future, there's a building next door to one of our shelters. That was an old motel. Like, how perfect is that? So we're thinking about that. It was actually a building that we were looking at before we bought the other shelter, and somebody bought it out from under us, and they were going to develop it into fancy condos, and it sat there doing nothing. And now the interest rates are so high that they can't fund their project, which is crazy. So, then I'm also thinking about Prince George's County because there's a huge need, and because maybe it's easier for people to be self-sufficient in Prince George's County. But guaranteed income is, something, really pushing as well. But we just finished a strategic plan, a 3-year strategic plan with a fantastic facilitator, if anybody needs a facilitator. And our focus is economic empowerment and economic security, building up my sister's place because we've grown so much really quickly. I'm very much of a yes person. Let's try it. Let's just do it. But haven't built up the back of the house. So we're hiring this economic empowerment director. We're hiring a workforce director. We're hiring another finance person, another development person, and really trying to beef up the foundation. I'm trying to think of what the other one was. I think it's the housing. Do we want to go into PG? Do we want to go other places? Yeah.
How many people are you working with? My sense is that once you come, as you say, you have those resources, help for life. How many people would you say you're actively working with? I mean, not open to working with, but actively.
Actively working with. So we have at least 20 in shelter, another 60 in our RISE transitional, another 45 in RISE plus. Our FRSP program is 150 people. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. It's kind of a madhouse. It's a lot of people, and we're sort of big, but we're not. There's Dash, who does similar things. There's House of Ruth. House of Ruth is doing amazing work. I'm sure they've come across. You've seen them. I think Sandra it's really funny because she's like, I'm tired of waiting for affordable housing. I'm just going to build affordable housing. So she got a big grant to build affordable housing, which is amazing. So she's dedicating housing, building her own housing. She's just tired of waiting for things to be affordable. So we all work together. And it's really interesting, too, because a lot of times we'll have a client who then goes over to Dash, who then might go over to House of Ruth. We all know the same clients, and we work really closely together, which is really nice. And we call it a continuum of care. And sometimes our shelter is not the best place for somebody. They don't like the way it's laid out, so maybe they'll go over to Dash, or, we have an opening and they don't. We work really closely together. But it's just growing and growing, and the more funds we have, the more people we can help, for sure. Unfortunately, it's, probably, there's no meeting the need, really.
So I don't know the data precisely, but there's some data that talks about recidivism, how many times a woman will try to leave
Yes.
before she actually leaves, like 3 to 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering the impact that has on your program and how many women you have to turn away because you don't have space for them?
Yeah, we have to turn away a lot of people. We don't even keep a list because, a wait list, because when somebody's trying to leave, they need to find a place right away. And because of the way our shelter is, it's 30, 90, 6 months. Turnover can happen tomorrow, or it could be a month. It just depends on when people are moving on. And that's where DC Safe comes in. But that's only 20 days. And then hopefully within 20 days, they're connected to some kind of transitional housing. When they come to us, they probably tried to leave several times already. We haven't had, maybe once or twice, we've had the case where somebody came back to the shelter. But usually they come through the shelter, they go through transitional housing, and they've gone through that trying to leave several times before they've come to us. Yes, and that's definitely, I don't know if I mentioned it last time I was here, we did an interesting case that we had was we put flyers in bathroom stalls, and in one case we put it at Mary Center, and one of the patients saw the flyer and then went into her appointment and her husband went to all her appointments with her, of course, and had 1 minute of private time with the doctor and told her about being, trying to flee. And then they called us. At the next appointment, she snuck out the back door. and her husband was waiting in the lobby. But that's how, you can imagine how many times and how just coming upon this flyer, gave her that opportunity. So, any other questions? Of course, you can email me anytime. My email is on our website, which is so much better now. We have, we got a really, I was sharing with Amy that I talked to staff to coming back. I had a development director and a communications person that were with me the first year I was there. The organization was going through a lot of change, and as you can imagine, whenever you have a new ED, there's a lot going on, and there were a lot of things going on before I got there, and they moved on. And when my development director left, I called Renee and I was like, would you ever consider coming back? And she did. And then Denisa, our communications person, had called me a couple years before and said, do you have any openings? And we didn't. But then when Renee came back, we called Denisa. Now they're this team, and they're amazing. And our website is really great. Happy to take any, if you want to send me an email, or if you have any ideas for us or partnerships, I'm, always eager to connect with people, as you allowed me to reconnect with CAB. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you, Mercedes. Just going to say a couple things in closing, some of which Mercedes prompted me to remember. One thing that's going to be a little new for us this year, Mercedes mentioned that our grant process, the grant process is long, so it's going to get a little shorter. We used to accept applications in November and award the grants in May. We're now going to start accepting applications in mid-January and still award the grants in May. Focus area committees will start meeting in February. For those of you who have done it before, you'll know there were traditionally about 5 meetings up front where you'd start with 20, 25, 30 applications and cull that down to the ones that the committee chose to site visit. We're not taking any of those meetings away from the process. We know that with a large group of applications, they need some serious vetting up front and consideration. We're just taking some pieces while you're doing site visit, things we used to do after, we're going to do parallel, and we'll have much more information about this without me getting too in the weeds on it tonight. But the short version is I think we're going to peel about 2 months off that grant process, which was something we were aiming for in this strategic plan. So I'm glad we'll be able to do this. So January for the applications, and those focus area signups will be coming out mid to late January, early February, a little later. Watch our newsletter for the specific dates. And I want to tell you about 2 upcoming events that we already have planned. One is our November educational event. It's on November 14th. I was looking it up on my phone because I forgot to write that down. It will be virtual, and it's going to be on guaranteed income. And so if you've gotten, your appetite whetted for that a little tonight, great, we'll have more. Joseph Lightman Santa Cruz, who's the executive director of CAB, who Mercedes mentioned and is working with, he'll be there, and we'll also have somebody from the Arlington Community Foundation. And then the other event we have planned for next April, it's April 11th, we're actually going to do a celebration for our 20th anniversary, and just have an event where we have members, former members, we'll be inviting some grantees, hopefully getting a bunch of the founders there, and just to enjoy and celebrate and pause and be glad about what Many Hands has been able to do over the last 20 years and kind of get ourselves ready and launched for the next 20 years. So that will be April 11th. I hope you're all able to join us this grant cycle. This is my 8th or 9th year at Many Hands. It's my 6th year on the board. I love it. I'm so glad my neighbor sent me a flyer and said, get involved. This is a great organization. These are great women. And she was right. It's a great organization. These are great women. So I hope you'll all join us this year. And thank you for coming tonight. And for those of you on the live stream, thanks for sticking with us through this. Thanks.